Lawn, and I will be attending the University of Notre Dame.
My name is Jack Allen. I will be attending the University of Nevada. Our unit coach and teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
Welcome, welcome. And we're going to be doing question number 2 today. And I'll read that for the record. And it says as follows: members of Congress are not only legislators, but, quote, they are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers, end quote. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? How effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers? You may begin.
The power of inquiry with the process to enforce it is an essential and appropriate auxiliary to the legislative function. This statement by Justice Willis Van Devonter in the 1927 case McGrain versus Daugherty officially established that congressional investigation has a legislative purpose and is therefore constitutional. While this case did set a precedent for Congress's investigative powers, Congress has been extremely effective in utilizing investigations ever since 1792, when Congress investigated General Arthur St. Clair following a significant military defeat by Native Americans. Among other notable congressional investigations are the Teapot Dome investigation in 1921, the Watergate investigation in 1973, and the most recent investigation into former President Trump for inciting the January 6th Capitol riot.
Have we lost somebody?
Yes, we lost Jack. In fact, Congress has been so effective in its investigations that it has exceeded the essential and appropriate purpose, which was demonstrated in the 1950s by Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin, who used his congressional platform to produce investigations that resulted in numerous highly publicized indiscriminate allegations. Similarly, the House Un-American Activities Committees aggressively threatened witnesses into relinquishing names of communist sympathizers from 1938 to 1974. This overstep in Congress's use of their investigatory powers is in part due to the judiciary, as seen in the 1958 case Barron-Blatt versus U.S., which held Congress could compel people to answer their questions in an investigation.
While congressional investigations often make headlines for the excitement of holding hearings, obtaining confidential documents, and probing into executive affairs to uncover corruption, oversight is more important. The vesting clause of Article 1, Section 1 implies the widespread power of oversight, which encompasses congressional investigation. Oversight also allows Congress to monitor the effectiveness of the law, while ensuring that the executive branch is properly enforcing it. However, the 2020 case, Trump versus Mazars, weakened the oversight powers of Congress by instituting a very specific balancing test to determine whether Congress may subpoena the president for specific documents.
While both powers are an essential and appropriate auxiliary to the legislative function, oversight is more significant because the power of oversight relies solely upon the legislative, while the power of investigation is shared with the executive branch, as illustrated by the role of inspector generals. Additionally, oversight is directly related to Congress's legislative function. James Madison supported this assertion in Federalist 51 when he wrote, "In framing a government, you must oblige it to control itself."
However, Congress has not utilized their oversight powers effectively and has thereby allowed the executive to expand so greatly that now Congress struggles to oversee all of it. The executive branch had just 4 departments in 1789, yet today there are 15 departments, 96 independent executive units, and 220 components of the executive departments, yet there is no authoritative list. Furthermore, the failure of oversight can be seen in the House's inaction to form an independent commission for the purpose of inspecting detainee maltreatment and the War on Terror in 2016, despite Congress being aware of prisoner abuse from the previous Abu Ghraib scandal. Similarly, the conflict between parties in the House Intelligence Committee over the Russian investigation demonstrates how hyperpartisanship has become a massive obstacle to effective oversight by promoting party over principle.
In his report on the inquiry of Robert Morris, James Madison claimed that Congress should possess itself of the fullest information in order to do justice to the country and public officers. Madison's point aligns with that of Justice Van Devonter to illustrate that Congress must first perform its duties of oversight so that certain situations may not fester to the point that an investigation is required to clean up the ugly aftermath. Thank you.
What a great job. Thank you very much. You said something about inspector generals coming into the executive branch. What other items do you think Congress has ceded to the other branches of government?
Another thing that Congress has ceded is really allowing the executive branch to expand its own self. This can be seen through the Reorganization Act of 1939, in which Congress allowed Franklin Delano Roosevelt to add another cabinet agency along with the Federal Security Agency to really expand the executive branch to a point that now Congress struggles to oversee all of it.
As well, Congress is aiding in this expansion through not checking the executive as functionally as they should have been. An example being the recent impeachment of President Trump did not functionally go through. It was more used as a public way to look at President Trump and not as an effective check against the executive.
Another instance in which the executive has overstepped its normal bounds is the Justice Department, which is a major part of the executive branch, yet takes over the traditional jobs of the legislative and judicial branches.
How do you say that? I don't understand how that's the government ceding its power to the executive branch. What has the Justice Department done that makes you say that?
I was just thinking of the size primarily. However, Theodore Lowy, professor at Cornell, calls it legicide, in which the legislative branch cedes most of its legislative powers to the executive branch. And most of this is just in terms of funding, because the legislative branch does have the purse, as the Federalist Papers would say, and they have the money, so it's not in their right principle to cede their powers.
Okay. Judge Chin?
Thank you. You mentioned some of the ineffectiveness of Congress in fulfilling its oversight and investigative powers. Can you think of where they have been successful in bringing about legislation or changes that have provided significant benefit to our country?
Absolutely. Some examples would be the investigation into the sinking of the Titanic, which resulted in marine safety legislation, along with the investigation into the Triangle shirtwaist factory fire, which also resulted in legislation that helped health and safety within the workplace.
Another example of a good bipartisan investigation was that following 9/11, and this resulted in numerous new rules instituting travel safety and anti-terrorism protocols.
Another example of functional investigation is that of Watergate, one of the most well-known investigations of all time. It provided a functional investigation that got to the bottom of the Watergate scandal.
So then how about examples of ones that didn't work? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, examples of investigations that didn't functionally work include that of the Benghazi scandal, which has often been called not necessarily a functional investigation, but more of a way to make Hillary Clinton look bad. Now, this is disputed by each party, but it can be argued that the Benghazi investigation didn't necessarily end in functional legislation. It was more of to a point to make Hillary Clinton look bad as a political candidate.
Okay.
Additionally, within the Johns Committee of Florida, this investigation process was primarily focused on rooting out homosexuals in Florida's universities and their staff. And this was another example of a very abusive investigation that really did not have a legislative purpose.
Okay. Mr. Miles?
Well, let's tie these together. Obviously, there are investigations going on all the time, every day, every year, every term of Congress. There's always investigations. The thing that seems to make the news is those where the individual or the group being investigated resists for as long as they can, as strongly as they can. If you were a member of Congress and you had subpoenaed someone in order to investigate their performance, and they were just flatly refusing to honor the subpoena. Blair mentioned the power of the purse that they have. would you sue them, take them to court and let the federal court make them do it? But you'd be at the back of a long, long line in federal court waiting for the case to be heard, or would you cut off their money?
Something I would do is not even bother with money. Congress has the power of contempt, which was reiterated in Anderson versus Dunn and McGrain versus Daugherty. And Congress could send its sergeant at arms to compel people to attend their investigations and to obtain documents that they have subpoenaed.
If I were in that situation, excuse me, Jeff. If I were in that situation, I would use neither of those. I would wage a more war of the press. I would be more vocal about how that is an action that should not be taken, and make it more of an issue of the people, so people would know about it, and then that would move out. So in that sense, I would not functionally use the purse or that of contempt. I would make it more of a political press issue.
To add on to my colleague's point, Justice Brennan noted in his in Hutchinson versus the United States that investigation is conducted solely to punish the investigated either by publicity or prosecution.
I'm interested in your discussion of the power of contempt. It hasn't been used for a long time, has it? When was it last used, and why do you think it hasn't been used?
One of the most recent times that it has been used with Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder, when he was subpoenaed to turn over documents regarding the Fast and Furious investigation. However, he failed to turn over these documents and Congress subpoenaed him. However, there has been a recent theme that Congress has really not wanted to hold people in contempt or really use its sergeant at arms to compel certain members of the executive branch to come to congressional investigations.
And a reason for this lack of holding people in contempt is many examples of it being overthrown. This could be seen in 1957 in Watkins versus the United States, when the House Un-American Activities was overthrown for holding Watkins in contempt of the court. And it further proved that these investigations were completely unfounded in legitimacy.
Thank you.
Would you say, though, that what you've identified in terms of the partisanship that exists, that one of the ways to address that would be to have a sort of an independent chair who is of neither party? Would that be successful or not?
I would argue that. Oh, Blair, you go.
No, Jack, go.
I would argue that that would be successful in the idea that he's of neither party. Moving around that partisanship would be a very functional idea, seeing as if it was a non-partisan to make that decision, they would be more objective and in that sense more functional, more of that of a judge who is non-partisan and would not make decisions based on political ideology.
Furthermore, another solution would be have unified committee staff. Mostly now, committee staff is hired through the committee itself, and the committee is chosen with their parties. So it's really a trickle-down partisanship. But as we have seen with specific committees such as the Intelligence and Ethics Committee, which does have a unified staff, the Senate Intelligence Committee is known for really having this sort of bipartisanship cooperation more, because that's really required within its investigations.
But yes, I do think that a nonpartisan chair does have great potential, given that hyperpartisanship results from parties not willing to investigate details of their own party most of the time.
So Mr. Miles, ask about that. Investigating people of their own party.
Yeah, their own party are members of the body. You've had 3 in the last 2 or 3 months. Marjorie Taylor Greene got stripped of her committees. Matt Gaetz, they're going to kick upstairs to the court, it looks like. Bo Brooks, from the wonderful representative from my state, got off scot-free. If you're a member of the House, what does somebody have to do, your party or the other party, to make you feel like it's time to go after them?
Well, in order to prompt an investigation into somebody, it just has to be agreed upon by the committee overseeing it. I remember that in 2018, the House newly taken over by the Democratic Party, promised to investigate Trump after 2 years. Oh, may I continue?
Your sentence, yes.
After 2 years of his term. And this shows that it's necessary for the hyperpartisanship to be overthrown and for the members of the legislative branch to do their jobs in overseeing and investigating everyone which they are.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good job. Thank you.
Very good job. It's a
Wonderful job,
wonderful.
Nevada. And now the judges will give you some feedback.
That was a great carrying your sentence through. It's wonderful how many times "and" can be used. That was a really marvelous presentation. Should we start with Judge Chin?
Oh, thank you. Your opening remarks were wonderful, quite scholarly, as you gave us some historical perspective going back to the 1792 first investigation involving a member of the military, walking us through the Teapot Dome, Watergate, McCarthy, House Un-American Activities. I also appreciate the fact that you provided support in your responsive answers to our follow-up. I think also the fact that you were able to think on your feet and provide some examples in response to our questions was quite enlightening, because it allowed us to know that you were thinking in terms of what could be done to address the concerns you expressed. So very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miles?
Yeah, thank you, Judge. We had talked in the breakout room, the three of us had through the morning, about the staff, the influence of the staff on these things, and who's on the staff and who isn't has so much influence. I mean, Hillary Clinton, a lot of people forget, was on the staff of the Senate Judiciary Committee and then the special committee in the Watergate hearings. Who is on the staff has so much impact on that, and I appreciated your mentioning that. I got to stop and thank you for this. Judge Chin and I have had the privilege of judging you in the district competition, the state competition, the national competition, and now on the third day. I don't know if you just like us a lot or if you can't get rid of us, but I've judged you so long that you sent me a coin commemorating the anniversary of the Constitution, and I've got it on my desk, and I'm very thankful for it. And what this proves to me is that Nevada must have the power of the purse. If you can mint these coins and send them out, that's pretty nice. The last thing I would say is, Caroline, there was a political science professor that teaches freshman and sophomore political science at the University of Notre Dame, and he judged in Indiana, I believe. He judged the Indiana competition with me. And he's looking for freshmen and sophomores that have game. And I'm gonna send him an email tonight and tell him that you're coming and that he needs to leave a note at the when y'all sign up for classes this fall, that if you sign up, you get in to his class. He would love to have you there. And I'll close that by saying that when you get to Notre Dame, I wish you the best of luck, except for when you play Alabama in any sport. Then I can't wish you luck in that. Otherwise, you'll be fine. Y'all did a great job. Thank you.
Great.
Judge Steele, thanks.
What a lovely job. That was really a lovely job. Your presentation was just exquisite. You're bringing up the inspector generals and that Congress could compel testimony was an interesting part of the discussion. Bringing up the Titanic and the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory and 9/11, you did a really nice job of showing both sides of the problems. And I agree, coming down to the unifying committee staffs, that's a very telling point that makes a huge difference in how Congress runs. And so thank you for appreciating that. And maybe one of you might decide you want to go work on one of the congressional staffs, because we need people there who have had the experience and the knowledge that you have. So please think about doing that. You're going to have a wonderful experience, as all of you